All right, everyone. So if you haven't watched the last video about compound pseudoclasses and display block and display inline, I recommend you spend a couple minutes and do that. This will make more sense if you haven't done that, or if you do view those videos first. So what we're going to do is I have this page here. This is exercise 4, and this is what it looks like. What I want to do is this is just a bunch of hyperlinks. Okay. If you look at the HTML, it's pretty simple. It's literally just a nav tag that has a bunch of hyperlinks in it. Okay, nothing particularly overly complicated. The second one's the same. This is kind of another method you might see. You might see a lot of sites do this too, where instead of using the nav tag, they may put it inside of an unordered list, where each list item is a hyperlink. Okay. Some of these I think are using that method. So you're going to see a combination of this on the internet. So there's not necessarily one way to do it. There's multiple sort of techniques. All right, so I'm going to turn this first one, this Google, Yahoo, Bing, and Lycos, and I'm going to turn it into a navigation bar. In this case, I want to have a vertical navigation bar. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like, you know, you will see them from time to time. So for instance, this is like if I do this, this is like a vertical, right? So it goes up and down as opposed to left and right. So how can I make something, or how can I style something like that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use compound selectors because there's actually a lot of hyperlinks here. And I want to make sure that I'm selecting just these. So you'll notice that there's a nav1. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to say nav1a. What that means is basically I'm only going to be selecting the hyperlinks that are inside of this nav1 ID that I've created. Okay. All right. First thing is I want to stylize the way my links look first. Okay. So let's, this is how it looks. I want to make them vertical. The easiest way to do that would be converting these from an inline element, which is what hyperlinks are by default, to being a block. So let's do that. Display block. All right, there you go. Now that they're blocks, I'm going to just give it a background color just so we can easily see it. So I'm going to give it yellow, and I'm going to make the text color red. All right, so it's going the full width because blocks are as wide as their parent. In this case, the parent is the body tag, so it's as wide as however big the body tag is. I wanted to act kind of more like these. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to give my, there's a couple ways I could do it. I could either give this a width or I could give these a width. Either way would work. I'm going to give each hyperlink a width. Let's do a width of 100 pixels. And I'm just going to put a little bit of padding on it just to make it a little easier to read. Just going to look a little nicer. Okay. And I'm going to put, so right now, if you take a look, you can kind of see how like the text is on the left side. I actually kind of want the text in the middle of this A tag, so it looks a little nicer. So I actually might do a little text align center. All right. And I'm just going to get rid of that underline. I just always never like that. It's text decoration, none. And now that I switch these to being blocks, I can use margins and use margin bottom. And I'm just going to kind of push each one down about 10 pixels. Okay. All right, so that's I'm really kind of doing that so you can visually see it. Most of the time, it doesn't look that obvious. Like here, it doesn't look quite as obvious, but I'm just kind of doing this for visual effect. Now what I'm going to do is let's use a pseudo class to create a hover effect so that when I'm hovering over a particular hyperlink, it'll change color. So how do we do that? Well, nav1a hover. Okay, I don't want to change all of the hyperlink hovers just the ones that are inside nav1. So that's why I did this. And so now this is when I hover over one of these links. First thing I'm gonna do is just change the background color. The default color is yellow. So let's make it red. Okay, now that's going to give me red text on a red background, which is going to be hard to read. So I'm going to change the text color from red to white. All right, so now when I do this, okay. So there's a lot of ways I could make a hover effect. In this case, I'm using the background and the color. Another way to do it, I'm going to not do it that way. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a border. Okay, now normally when we do a border, we set it to a style, a thickness, and a color. I'm going to set it to transparent. Okay, transparent meaning it's invisible. And I'm going to set it to 5 pixels solid. Okay. What I'm going to do is when someone hovers, let's change this from transparent to being red. It's still the same thickness. It's just the reason why I'm having these other ones is otherwise you'd be adding that thickness only in the hover, and that would actually cause things to move. I don't want them to move, but yeah, it's doing that. This is actually pretty similar to what is happening here. See how it's like adding that little white border around it? It's pretty much the same concept. If I made this a little thinner, like 1 pixel instead of 5, that would pretty much be identical. All right, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is I'm going to take these elements here in social media too, and I'm going to do a horizontal navigation bar. Okay, so what I'm going to do is nav 2A. That way I'm only affecting the hyperlinks here and not anywhere else in the page. And I'm going to give it a background color. Let's say, what do I want to do? I'm going to say light blue. Okay. And change the color. I'm going to make that dark blue. Okay. And let's do a little padding just to start off with. All right. So this is my thing here. Now, I want them all to be in the same line. Now, let's say hypothetically I wanted to give it. So right now, the way it works is that the width of each one of these is the width of the content. So however long the text inside is, that's how long the hyperlink is. Maybe I want to give it an exact width. Unfortunately, I can't do that as long as this is a inline element, which is what it is. Now, if I made this a block, the problem is that it's going to stack them on top of each other, which is not what I want. I want them all in the same line. So why don't we use that inline block that I talked about? Because that will let me have it as a block, but also let it display in a line like that. So now if I want to do something like give it a width of, I don't know, 75 pixels, I can do that. Okay. So I'm setting up the width. Once again, maybe I'm going to, use text align. That's the center. I want to get rid of that text decoration. None. Okay. So that's kind of my styling. Once again, if I'm going to use pseudo classes to set up like a hover effect, so I can tell which one of my options I'm on top of. By the way, if I want to move them from a little bit more from each other, I could use like a margin right. And I'll set it to like, I don't know, 10 pixels, 15 pixels. You can see it's putting a little bit of space there. Now what I'm going to do is do a hover effect to change just the background of this. And so I'm going to change it to, let's do like a green. Okay, so let's do a background color, light green. I'm going to change the text color to dark green, like a forest green. And so now, this is my hover effect. All right. Final way is you might see it look something like this, where it's inside of an unordered list, okay, and UL. If we're going to do this, we got to do a couple extra more steps. So unordered lists defaultly have bullets that we don't want. We want to get rid of them. So what I'm going to actually do is come in here and I'm just going to get rid of that. List style type equals none. All right, that's going to get rid of those points. Now, also, you'll notice that it's kind of what's actually happening here is this is part of the user agent. Your unordered list actually has a default padding that's only on the left side. You can see where it's called padding inline start. Okay, so that's that spacing right there. And I don't want it. I don't want that spacing. So what I'm actually going to do is let's get rid of that. We're going to zero that out by removing it by setting our padding to 0. All right. And so now we can kind of decide, well, okay, do we want an inline element or a, do we want like a vertical navigation bar or horizontal one? So you have to understand that although hyperlinks are inline, list items are actually blocks. Okay, so that's actually why you can see these are stacking on top of each other. It's not because of the hyperlink, it's because of the list item. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come into here and I can say list item. I'm going to keep this as I want to make it an inline or a horizontal navigation bar. So let's use that inline block. What that should do is then place all of these in a line like that. And then I can just start stylizing these. Okay. So background color. And actually, well, I don't know if I want to. I'm going to do this just so you can kind of see what's happening here. Background color, light pink color, hot pink. Okay. I don't know if I like that. Need it a little bit darker. All right, there you go. All right. I want this to be a little bit wider. So now if I try to set the width to this, to the hyperlink, it's not going to work because the hyperlinks are still actually inline. It's actually this that's the block or the inline block. So I'd actually have to set any of my box model properties to that. Oops, is that padding? Okay. Now you'll notice here that once again, when I do that, it seems like it spaces it out because what's actually happening is I'm only setting the background color for the hyperlink. So once again, if I have like background colors or something, you want to apply it to the thing that's the container. So I want to do it to the list item, not to the link itself. And then now I can take the hyperlink. Let's put it in the center. Let's get rid of that. If I want to get rid of the text decoration, I got to do that directly to the hyperlink. Okay. If I want to do any box model properties, it really should be to the list item because that's actually what is the block or the inline block. And then once again, let's do so that's my general style. Let's set up a pseudo class. So I'm going to be very precise again, do nav, just in case there are other lists there. I don't want to affect all lists. So what I would actually do here is I can change the color this way. This would change the background color. And if I want to change that, now that would only change the background color, not the font color. If I want to change the text, that's the A tag. So I'd actually need another one, nav3 LIA hover. I think I'm just going to make it white. I think that will look good. Okay. So, you're going to see a lot of variations of this. There's no quote unquote one right way of doing it, but a lot of these methods involve taking a group of things, typically changing them from either inline to block or block to inline or inline to, inline to inline block or something, and then stylizing them accordingly. So here, this is actually using that nav, and inside of that, there's an unordered list here. So it's like, this is kind of similar to that last one, where it's like, each one of these is a, link and blah, blah, blah. There's some other things here. Oh, that's the menu. You can't see that right now, but it's like there's some other stuff going on there I don't want to talk about, but, so you're going to see, if you go to different websites, you may see different techniques, this is more of the more old school way, but these days you probably are going to see something that's more like that, because navigation containers are really good, because if something's in a nav tag, it actually tells your screen reader what it is. It says this is a navigational link, whereas if it's only in an unordered list, it won't do that. So it's better to have more information when possible. Okay. All right. So why don't you guys try that out?